Carl.
Greetings, Michael. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How are you doing so far in the
Uh,
grand year of 2021?
Fantastic. Yeah, things are great.
I know
Super good.
people who follow us by video and not just by audio will see as we are opening here that your background has changed. The blue couch, which obviously I was particularly fond of, is now gone. There is a very non-blue, otherwise known as red couch behind you now, which signals I know that you have moved now. You were in New Zealand for a long time. I think when we first started this podcast, you went to the UK. You are now back in the US. You're back in Utah. You've come back home to roost, I guess. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Time, but welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the blue couch has been swapped out for a red chair, but don't worry, the blue couch will be back soon. It's just being shipped from London back to Park City. So,
well, I've said, and I'm honored that you would have such a connection to the blue that you would ship it from London just to stay on Kitces brand. That's
yeah, I can guarantee you that was the first point of conversation around what we should take when my wife, the interior designer, said, "Oh, but we have to because Michael loves the blue." So for sure.
My best to your wife. We are clearly simpatico on the value of blue in interior design.
For sure.
So ironically, like on that, I guess on that theme a little for our topic today. So I put out this question to all the folks that follow us on Twitter a week ago around what do you want to hear us talk about? And we got a lot of feedback around what I kind of think of as the aesthetics of the sales and prospecting process. So when you're sitting down with a prospect in that meeting where hopefully they're going to say yes and become a client, maybe we brought a little bit of paperwork along that we're hoping they're going to sign. But we have sort of the infamous like marketing collateral, sales collateral. You know, my friends in the institutional world would call this like the sales enablement tools and materials, that like the supporting material that we have to close business, to close the sale. Right? In the institutional investing world, this is like your pitch book that tells the story of your investment process and your 157 years of experience and all the different things that we have in investment pitch books. And so we had this question come in of like, do you do this? Do you do something like this in the financial planning world? Like, do you bring a PowerPoint? Do you bring a brochure of services? Do you bring something else? Do you bring nothing? Like, what do you bring to the meeting when you're trying to close a client? Or I guess I'll even say, do you bring anything to the meeting? Because I'm fairly certain our answers to this are going to be different. Do you, or what do you bring? Or how do you even think about this, Carl, of bringing that kind of stuff to a meeting where you're trying to get someone to engage you for financial advice?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think you're right. We will have different views, which makes this fun. And one thing I know for sure is that I'm wrong, right? Like I have zero, but I won't be in doubt about this one, but I'm often wrong, never in doubt. And I'm pretty sure this will be the case again today. I think the tools so I'm just like, to me, there needs to be a little context. So let's assume we've had a first meeting. Okay. And in that first meeting, we had some sort of discovery process, right? Like and we've talked about that at length. We've asked really good questions. We've understood. We come back for the second meeting, and in that meeting, I think of the tool that we're going to bring there as simply to confirm, to help the client understand, and to confirm in the client's mind that we have thoroughly diagnosed. So I think in order for there to be a yes there, and the yes again is mutual, right? Like I really feel like we should get in that mindset where this is a mutual discovery process to see if we want to bring them on as a client as equally as much as them deciding whether they want to hire us. In order for a yes to happen, there, two things have to happen. One is you have to thoroughly diagnose so that you can at least sort of write the beginning prescription, right? And with this audience, the people listening to this are probably really good at pattern recognition and the diagnosis might happen relatively quickly. And you might even be tempted to shortcut this process because you know already exactly what you're going to say in that meeting.
So meaning like the client says, I got this and that problem in the first meeting as you're talking about it, and you just start coming forth like, oh, well, you could do this, you could try that. Or like you start trying to problem solve right there on the first meeting.
Yeah, and this becomes particularly problematic or particularly tempting when you have a niche business, right? Because you've seen it before. So I just want to make sure what we're talking about here is two things have to happen. One is you have to correctly and thoroughly diagnose. And the second one is the client has to feel thoroughly diagnosed. And that's why I'm pointing at this idea of shortcutting it sometimes, because we become really good at pattern recognition. And the people listening to this, especially if you have a niche business, you specialized in something, you've seen it before, it may take you 3 minutes. Oh, doctor, boom, referred from this doctor. I already know what the problem is. It may take you 3 minutes to diagnose, and you will probably be correct about what the next steps are going to be, but you haven't given them a chance yet to feel diagnosed. And let me just tell you one quick story. Sorry that for those of you watching on YouTube, the sun has shifted, and you get to. So we'll just keep rolling though. I think that's better than me standing up and moving it. Let me tell you a quick story. A friend of mine's, she is Russian, which she says means that she's really direct. She's Russian and she's an emergency room doctor. And she has told me how often she walks into the lobby to like get the next patient when there's like a backlog of patients. And she feels like she can just look. And I've had other emergency room doctors tell me this too. And I think Gladwell did a little bit in Blink around this. She said, she can often just scan their faces and be like, oh, she said she can be reasonably sure on the people that she could just give ibuprofen and send them home.
Right.
And she often wants to say, hey, how many of you want the answer? And how many of you want to go through the whole theater?
Yeah.
Right. And she's had 2 complaints in her career, and both complaints have not been misdiagnosis. In fact, they were accurately diagnosed. The complaints have been, she didn't take the time to listen to me.
Right.
So just keep in mind, those 2 things have to happen. So this is my long-winded answer to what do we give? To me, what shows up in that first meeting, I'm going to have to, those of you who aren't listening, you just have to understand for a minute. I just have to, and those that are, you get to see Michael and I make sausage. And I have to just close these blinds because that was not expected. And we're in a new place and we'll all forgive each other for that.
Editing is a wonderful thing.
Well, even if we don't edit, people need to, we just ship. So here's, to me, what do we show a client in that meeting? To me, it's a 1-page financial plan. We haven't gotten to know each other yet. There's no way you did the full insurance analysis and you did the full investment process and you did all that. You're asking them to start the journey with you. And to me, what we would show is a tool to confirm that we're on the same page. Here's what I heard you say. Here's what we identified as your goals. Here's your current reality. Here's where you think you want to go. I think we're in the ballpark. Come with me on this journey. The way you do that is you sign up and we get started. Like, that's, to me, and I would do that on the smallest piece of paper possible.
I like how you framed that, because the irony, like I think back to at least early roots of my career, which was like much more product based and much more sales based. And we did this, right? It was a product proposal. It was an investment proposal. Maybe you generated from Morningstar. Maybe you generated it from whatever your product illustration software was. But we came to the table with this. Like, here is a proposal. I have understood your situation to be blank. I am proposing this as a potential solution. Here's how it would work. Here's how it would project or what it would look like embedded into your situation, right? Because this was usually a narrow scope product. So we're not doing full comprehensive financial plan. We're doing like the stuff we got to do to show the thing that we're trying to sell. But we did come to the table with a proposal. Like, here's where you stand. Here's where you're trying to get. Here's what would need to change. Here's how the thing I'm bringing to the table helps that. Would you like to move forward? And that's kind of how we set up the story and ask people to make a commitment and sign. And it strikes me, in particularly in the context of what you're saying here, like, if you've been in the business for a while, like, you've done product proposals. A lot of firms do investment proposals, and almost no one does a financial planning proposal, which to me is the essence of what you're talking about. Like, we had a version of this recently on the Advisor Success podcast. So Sten Morgan, which was episode 210, so kitces.com/210, like, he actually has a really cool version of this. He has a particular focus around taxes and how he quantifies the value of, like, well, we're going to do this, but we're not just going to do it 1 year. We're going to do it over 10 years. And over 10 years, you're going to accumulate, save this much in taxes. So just want to let you know, if you start working together, I know at least we have an opportunity to save you $72,000 in taxes. And of course, we look more forward to working with you on a comprehensive basis. How does that sound? And people are like, well, your plan's only like $5,000 a year. So $72,000 sounds like a pretty good ROI. Let's go down this road. So he's sort of, Sten's taken it to kind of the logical extreme of this, of he has figured out a system about how to quantify it and boil it down to something more tangible. So it really helps to put the fee in context. And maybe that's sort of the advanced ninja version. But at its core, I think you make a powerful point here that just so few of us come to the table with a financial plan proposal. And like, not the plan, right? We're not doing the whole plan. The plan is what you get after the engagement, because we have only gone so deep. But putting something together that, and again, I think you framed it well, that shows that you have heard their problems, because you can reflect it back to them in the document, right? Every proposal document always starts with, like, here's where you are. Are we agreed about this? That's how you show them they're heard. And then here's the kind of stuff we're going to start doing together. And yes, I'm sure like someone is listening to this and is like, but you can't know what you're going to do because it's still, you haven't done the full financial plan. Like, I get it. There's some things, there are some things we already know we're going to be doing. There are some things that are clearly broken, like 3 minutes into the first conversation with the client, of where some of this is going. We can start putting on the table the proposal, the preliminary plan, the one-page plan, as you frame it, of here's my understanding of your concern, of your situation, your concerns, what you're trying to get to and change. And here are the areas where I think we could work together and I can help.
Yeah, could I let me just toss something out at you. Let me tell you what I think should be on that piece of paper, then we can talk about it. And then I think it would be useful to talk about our strong opinions about what it should not be.
Okay.
Right? Because I just think that'll be helpful and that'll cause some trouble, and that's always good. So what I think that piece of paper should have on it, and again, I call it a one-page financial plan. It's not the plan, as you pointed out, and people get hung up on that sometimes. I think it has,
you did call it one-page financial plan.
Yeah, but it's not you're going to do more work. So I think it has a statement of purpose. That's what I like calling it. It's a sentence or two right on top that really nails the why, right? So point back to Bill Bacharach's work, Simon Sinek's work, Dan Sullivan, even George Kinder, right? Like some little sentence or two. I like to think of it as a statement of financial purpose. I'd love to see that as an industry standard, right? Like there's a statement of financial purpose. Mine, for instance, says time with my family, mainly outside, and service in the community. And I could rattle off 10 examples of clients. Statement of financial purpose. Next, a list of goals that you've identified. And you did that in the way we've had lots of conversations about how you ask people about their goals. But I think that a list of goals is listed. They're broad, like pay for education, retire, take that trip each year, relatively broad goals. And they're listed in order of riskiness. In other words, consequence of failure. And you don't have to tell that to the client. The way the client views that is in order of importance, right? The way you're viewing it is like, which one would have the highest consequence of failure based on what they said. Okay. And that could be, for one client, that could be nothing else matters if my kids don't get the education I want them to get. And I'm thinking of some of, like, just stereotypically, I've heard that a lot from immigrant families, right? Like, I absolutely care a lot about nothing else matters. Somebody else could say, I don't like, they should pay for their own school, like, so
We'll
but
all have our own goals about how we stack them up, but that's the point, right? I feel
exactly
heard when you reflect back to me like,
my goals.
yeah, right. Like, I know a lot of people say you got to pay for all your kids' stuff, but I believe they got to work their own way through. And like when you put that on the sheet back to me, I'm like, okay, he gets
Yep.
he's heard me. I don't want to do the standard thing, or maybe
Exactly.
it's
So
not no judgment, just help people
exactly.
feel heard.
Statement of financial purpose, list of goals, next 90 days, estimate of cost. So next 90 days is next actions. Like, what are we going to knock off in the next 90 days? And those are broad. Like, it could be that you heard in the first meeting, geez, my wife and I, since we've had our second child, we just have never thought about life insurance and it keeps me up at night. Well, that would probably be a number one goal, because consequence of failure, A, it's keeping you up at night. B, huge consequence of failure. Next 90 days, number one step, you know what, Michael, and working together, we're going to knock out this insurance. In fact, next time we meet, I'll have a full plan on exactly what we should do, the type and quantity and how it fits in with the overall thing. But you haven't done that yet. You just have that as next 90 days. And then an estimate of cost. That's what I would have on that page.
So I was gonna be my questions though is, like, how do I write what I'm doing in the next 90 days? Because I haven't done my plan yet. Do I have to do my plan to figure out what I'm doing in the next 90 days? Or
I think what you touched on earlier is really important. Like, give yourself some credit. You probably know what are the, like, it might say get portfolio allocated based on what we find, based on what you told us. Get portfolio aligned with your goals, right? Like, that could be number two. You certainly can't come to that meeting with an investment proposal. In fact, when we get to the what not to bring, that's on the top of my list, right? But yeah, I think give yourself a little bit of credit. Based on what you've heard, it could just be have an articulated philosophy for paying for education and come up with the options. That could be number two, because you heard education in the first meeting. People don't care about your solutions at this point. They care about the fact that you nailed their problems. Yeah. And they'll want to work with, I think if you're stumbling upon objections around, well, I don't know how you invest the money, or I don't know, if you're stumbling upon tactical objections, I feel like we talked about this in one episode. I feel like that should be a sign that you missed something, that you didn't listen, that you didn't ask the right question. So and again, I know I'm probably wrong, but that's what I would love to see in a first meeting, in a close, a second meeting, we'll use that term, close, bring a prospect onto a client.
Yeah, to me, this is something that has really kind of shifted over time, and just, my experience for working through clients. And, we had Joe Duran from United Capital on the podcast a couple of years ago that I thought made this point particularly well. And I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit trying to paraphrase him, but the point that he made was like, we spend so much time these days as we've gotten more comprehensive in planning and trying to not just sell the value of planning, but literally trying to sell the comprehensive plan. And the reality is, no client wakes up at 2:00 in the morning in a dead sweat because they don't have a comprehensive financial plan.
Never.
They wake up stressed, and they get off their duff and decide to finally hire a financial planner because there's a thing that hurts.
An acute problem.
And if we don't, even if you're going to work with them on an ongoing basis, if you don't solve the first problem first, at best you sound tone deaf. At worst, you never get the opportunity, right? It's like, I fell and I injured my elbow and I think I might have broke it. And you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, I'd be happy to put you through a comprehensive body scan over the next 3 weeks. It's like, my elbow hurts. It's hanging kind of limp. Can we x-ray and put a cast on this? The doctor's like, well, I can't evaluate your elbow without doing comprehensive analysis of your entire body chemistry to understand what I might prescribe and how it might impact the holistic body experience. So come back in 3 weeks and we'll finish the whole body scan. It's like, that could be totally right for a long-term multi-year relationship with that doctor. But if you don't fix my darn elbow, I'm just going to go find another doctor who will fix my elbow and put in an x-ray and send me home that day in a cast. And I think we do kind of get into that sort of trap sometimes. The more we've gotten focused on planning and advice, I think sometimes the more we've gotten stuck on that. And what I like about the way that you're framing the proposal is like, I'm not even listing out all the things we're going to do because
No.
I can't do that yet because I haven't gotten through the whole plan. Like, what is your purpose? Where are we going? Right? Because it helps the client feel heard. What are the goals? So I can be clear you have been heard and we're on the same page. And what's one doggone thing we're going to work on, which is highly likely to be, your
The
elbow,
hurt
right?
elbow.
The hurt. We're going to tackle the
Yeah.
hurt in the first 90 days. And you know what? As a part of that, I'm going to start gathering the stuff I need for the plan. And I hope we're going to be working together on a long basis. And heck, maybe I even propose and quote an entire planning relationship. I don't have to just quote an hour of advice, but like, I don't have to say the first thing I'm going to give you is the plan. I can say the first thing I'm going to give you in the first 90 days is I'm going to help your elbow.
Yeah, and to me, like we could just talk for so long about this because the idea of the plan to me is just like it's such a crazy there is no quote unquote giant unveil one-time event called a plan. The plan is this ongoing process that never starts. You're just saying, let's start the plan, right? The plan starts with like, let's solve the acute problem right now. And it does get into this dance because often, and I just want to acknowledge this, often the acute problem is investment performance. Like we know often people come in and go, this portfolio stinks. I need help now. And so what we're not saying here is, and often we get like the hardcore planners saying, like, well, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about planning or investment performance because I'm not about investment performance. And what we're saying here is this is the art. The dance here is knowing how to go, hey, I totally get, man, that elbow looks like it really hurts. Look, there's a bone sticking out. We've got to, sorry to take the analogy a little too far. We've got to fix that. And the only way for me to fix that is I have to have a little bit of context real quickly. Can we talk a little bit about where we're headed? Okay, cool. That took us 20 minutes. Great, let's get this fixed. First thing we got to do is you're not sleeping at night because you don't have a health life insurance and this investment portfolio is, a problem. Let's get that fixed. As we go, here's where we're headed, right? That give yourself a little credit to nobody can give you the exact steps tactically to do this. You are a brilliant financial planner. You know how to handle this. Meet people where they are, help solve their problems, greet them with what they think they need, what they think they want, and then carefully worded, pull righteous tricks to get them to where they need to be. That's all we're doing in that first 1 to 3 meetings, right? We're starting that process. And I think the more you try to convince people with facts and figures and numbers, which let's get to this point of like, what do you not bring? Right? Even if the person's coming in with the acute problem being investment performance, I don't think we want to start a relationship with a battle around performance, right? Because we know many of you are really good at that and you'll probably win. And 18 months later, you'll regret it because you'll lose again, right? Like a relationship won on performance is going to be lost on performance. So anyway, I think that sums up what I have to say about that whole question, which is such a good question, obviously.
So one follow-up that I'd ask you, I don't know if we'll be similar on this or not, is what about bringing something like a sample financial plan? Like, we're not doing the whole financial plan because I haven't gotten the whole process for you, and we may or may not do it right away or at least focus on it because your 90-day plan, maybe I'll do a plan in the 90 days action, but I'm not going to make the plan the 90-day action. I'm going to make your elbow the 90-day action. What do you think about bringing a sample plan into the meeting? I'll admit from my end, like I'm asking that as a leading question. Like I become a fan of this, just sitting, having spent so much time trying to sit across from clients and say, like, we do awesome comprehensive financial planning. It's great. You're going to love it. You're going to feel so much more organized. We're going to identify all these things and help you with them. Like, I spent so many years trying to tell people how great it was going to be. It got so much easier when I just showed them. When I just brought one and showed them. The irony is it will make you much more focused on how nice and polished your plan actually looks, which I think is a good thing. For charging thousands of dollars for plans, it could actually have a little bit more polish to it. But I I started bringing sample plans and just saying, like, let me just walk you through for a few minutes, like what we're going to be creating for you as part of this process, so you understand what you're getting out of it, why we charge these fees, why we're talking about planning, and what that really means beyond you're going to talk about financial things, I'm going to give you financial advice.
Yeah, I love that idea of, and I think of it, and let's not take this the wrong way, but I think of it as part of the theater.
Mhm.
And I look, that's important. That's not important just for us in the selling process. It's important for the client. Again, back to my Russian doctor friend, right? Like it's important to feel. So if you're going to help somebody behave, they've got to feel that way. So I think just I don't even know that it has to be opened, right? But the just the heft of that thing sitting on the desk and saying, look, where we're headed. And I think you could also do this in some of those interactive plans that people do, where you could say, look, let me walk you through where we're headed. We don't have enough information for us this to be particularly useful at this moment for us, but here's where we're headed. Eventually, once a quarter, once a year, you and I will be sitting down and we'll be updating this thing, and it will be keeping you on path, and we can show the beautiful line, all of that stuff. But first, let's fix the elbow, right? But the idea of a plan, like flipping through it real quick, or maybe even just being able to go like pointing at it, like, look, this is where we're headed.
Yep.
And, we're going to cover insurance, we're going to cover taxes, we're going to cover all this stuff. I used to say to people all the time, like, I'm going to help you in so many ways that I can't even begin to tell you. And part of it is I don't even know yet
Right.
what your way is going to be. I could tell you stories from every single client, what their way was, but your way will probably be different. It could be a behavioral thing, it could be taxes, it could be inheritance, it could be sale of a business, it could be estate planning, it could be a lot, it could be an asset location decision that we make. Like, I don't know what your way will be. And that could be one way of you just pointing at, like, but I do know that someday there will be a stack of stuff
Right.
that looks like that, right? And just dropping on that. I used to do that with when I used to use for $1 million portfolios. I used to use Dimensional's one fund solution. So like people would pull up $1 million account and there would be one fund. And because it did all the rebalancing internally, like we got rid of a whole bunch of behavioral problems. Like it was beautiful. And to get over the wait, I own one fund problem, I printed out the annual report. I used to print out the prospectus and the annual report, which was like 2 inches thick because it was 13,000 positions.
Right. Right.
And I would just drop it on the table. I would go, look, it looks like you own one thing, but you don't. Thunk. Right. And that was the end of the discussion. So I think those visuals are helpful. So yeah, I like that idea.
So then as we come to the end here, you've kind of mentioned this a few times, like, what is your not to bring thing? What are we
To
supposed to not
me,
bring to this?
it's anything around convincing, right? Proving. It's any crutch that I would use to get somebody to trust me. That's
All right, but
not.
not to
That's
undermine what
not.
we just said, like, isn't that like, isn't bring a sample financial plan a version of proving? Like, am I
Yeah,
digging
yeah,
myself?
yeah. And I think. I mean, look. Maybe the better way to point at this is like, look. Think of a doctor, like you've never had a doctor like walk you through all the studies of the medicine they're prescribing. Like you've never, and if you saw them printed over on the side of the table, you'd probably be like, oh, there's a lot of stuff over there, right? Like that. So that could be helpful. But I think pulling it out and bombarding people with, so like I'm thinking the one thing I would be really hesitant to at this stage of the game is to try and prove that my portfolio is better than the last person's, right? Like, let me show you, because we all know that, like, you give me any portfolio ever,
Mhm.
and if I have the benefit of 5 years of hindsight, I can beat it. And and so there's this. I think anything along those lines. I think if we just go back to what's the purpose, the purpose is to confirm that we've nailed the problem. Somebody feels listened to and understood for the first time. The rest is theatrics. And I only think the thing that gets in the way, the thing I would point to the most, is probably the most common thing we use, which is some sort of pitch. And I believe this is true in the institutional investment consulting world, by the way, because I did plenty of that. And we stopped bringing in 2-inch thick pitch books. And I would say, I know, I was going to use a name, but I know the next guy is going to bring in a pitch book, and I know the next guy, and I know the next guy, but we want to confirm that you've been heard. And so that's, I would just avoid investment, performance, pitch. We're super smart. Look at the portfolios we build stuff.
Yeah. I mean, to me, just the caveat at the end of the day, like if as you're in that crucial phase of getting the client on board and showing your value to the client, like if you set investments as the anchor in that meeting, it's pretty hard to ever get the client to view you differently. We talk a lot about, the dynamics of fees, and do clients have to pay for it separately in order to value it separately? Maybe we can do that as another conversation someday. But the challenge I find for a lot of firms, like, it's not that the client only pays an AUM fee and doesn't pay a planning fee that makes them investment centric. It's that when we sit down for this meeting, we don't pull out a financial plan proposal. We pull out an investment proposal, an investment pitch book, and then say, and you're going to love our financial planning too. But we've already set the tone around the investments, and that's a hard thing to change later. So I love the way that you frame this around sort of one-page financial plan, or just, I think of it, a financial plan proposal. If we stop coming to the table with investment proposals and we start coming to the table with financial plan proposals, you get a different kind of conversation with your client.
Totally. Love it. That's great. Thanks for that conversation, Michael.
Thank you, Carl.
Cheers.